headed the week here earlier. You guys all ready? What y'all? It's time. You're not ready? Today I sent to Houston City Council a draft of a new equal rights ordinance for the city of Houston. The document is the result of more than 2 months of discussions with stakeholders from inside the city and across the community. I want to thank Councilmember Ellen Cohen, who is with me today, and Councilmember Mike Laster, who have been intimately involved in this process and who chose early on to work with me and to help carry this legislation through to what we hope will be successful passage next month at City Council. As I stated in my State of the City address earlier this month, the Houston I know doesn't discriminate. It really doesn't matter in Houston, and it shouldn't matter in Houston. Your place of origin, your gender, your age, what physical limitations you may have, your race, or who you choose to love. And because Houston is such an open and welcoming place, and those things shouldn't matter, it's time to codify in ordinance that position. I've heard people say that, well, things are going well in Houston, why do we need it? Every other major city in America has chosen to put in writing its belief in the equality of all its citizens and the right of all of its citizens to engage in the activities and benefits of being in those cities. And I think it's time for the city of Houston to bring itself into alignment with all of our peer cities. The draft ordinance will prohibit discrimination in city employment, in city contracting, in housing, in public accommodation, and in private employment in businesses that employ at least 50 employees. It will not apply to religious institutions or organizations. Complaints about violations of the ordinance and decisions regarding prosecution are to be handled first by the city's Office of Inspector General and then by the city attorney. If the subject of a complaint refuses to cooperate in the investigatory process, a petition will be made to the Houston City Council for a subpoena to bring that entity in and compel that entity to cooperate or to answer questions. The ordinance does give me discretion to create an advisory task force to study and report on matters related to the ordinance, but there is not going to be a human rights or an equal rights panel to take complaints. We have decided to make this an administrative process, and the complaint process and the investigation would be handled confidentially within the Office of Inspector General and the legal department. I intend to present the full draft ordinance to council in a public presentation on April 30th. Councilmember Cohen has the Quality of Life Committee and will be chairing that process, as well as working with me to answer council members' questions in the interim. The ordinance may be viewed by clicking on our ordinance link off the city's main webpage. And by the way, Janice, I think that also our new vehicle for hire ordinance is available on that link as well.
It's supposed to be.
Since we released that last week. I look forward to your questions. I want to give Councilmember Cohen an opportunity, if she wishes, to make an opening statement as well, because as I've said, she's been engaged in this process, and I appreciate her willingness to roll her sleeves up and to be an ally in this. Councilmember?
Thank you. Clearly, Mayor, as a politician, I can't refuse the opportunity to say a word or two, but I'm thrilled that we are where we are today. I realize the mayor said that we've taken 2 months to produce this ordinance. I'm a lot older than the mayor, and I've been around a lot longer, and I know that we've been involved in this ordinance since I was involved in the early 80s. The ordinance that treats people with equality. And it took this mayor and her courage and the intellect of the city attorney to put together, working with the business community and with leadership from the community, to put an ordinance together that I think says to the rest of the country that we are not only a city that has an enormous population of various members of every group, but we are a community and a city now that says we welcome you, our visitors, and our citizens to a city that provides equal opportunities for all. So I'm pleased to be involved with it. I'm looking forward to working with my fellow council members, and I'm particularly looking forward, as the mayor mentioned, to the April 30th Quality of Life meeting, which I might just add is open to everyone and anyone, and people that want to come and speak there can do so. I have a feeling we'll have a large group, but we look forward to that dialogue. So thank you very much, and thank you, Mayor.
Now, I've already heard it said that this is an ordinance specifically for the gay and transgender community. That is, in fact, not the case. The City of Houston does not have any local ordinances protecting any groups of people. What's happened in many other cities across the United States is that they have gone into existing civil rights ordinances or human rights ordinances or non-discrimination ordinances and added sexual orientation and gender identity. But the City of Houston has no existing ordinances, so this is the first time we have been able to do a comprehensive ordinance that protects not just the GLBT community, but people on the basis of race or ethnicity or religion or age, etc. And while there are federal protections today for many of those classes, we think it's important to state at the local level and by the governing body of the City of Houston that we don't believe in discrimination, and we're putting it in writing and proving it. So, happy to answer questions.
A couple of detailed questions. It doesn't appear to be listed here. Veterans, are veterans covered?
Yes.
Yes.
And city appointments, are those city?
Yes.
Okay, in addition to city employment and city contracts?
Not city appointments.
Well, the city can't discriminate on the basis of, well, if we can't discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or any of the other things in there, we're not going to discriminate on that basis in making city appointments.
Okay, so
It's just
It's not specified in the ordinance, is what he's trying to say.
right, and is the business community behind this?
I sincerely hope so. Now, we have, they'll have to speak for themselves, but we have had a number of conversations. I started this process several months ago with a personal phone call to the Greater Houston Partnership, with a personal phone call to representatives of the Houston Restaurant Association and so forth. We have tried to keep the business community apprised, and I hope that they'll stand with us, but they'll have to make that decision.
Mayor, talk about teeth and sanctions and penalties that businesses could possibly face as a result of violating this ordinance if passed.
These would be Class C misdemeanors, punishable by up to a $500 fine. For an ongoing case of discrimination, we decided not to leave it open-ended, that we would put a cap on it, the $500 fine per day, up to a maximum of $5,000. And it tracks the ordinances of Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, other cities that have had these ordinances for a long time, and makes it a Class C misdemeanor.
What did you see or hear in this community that prompted you to move forward with this ordinance?
One of the reasons that early on in my tenure as mayor, I issued an executive order clarifying what the rights of transgendered individuals particularly were, to common sense treatment and fair treatment in the access to public facilities, was that this is an area where more and more people are publicly acknowledging gender transformations. And it is an area that where friction arises because there's so much change. And I thought it was important to be very clear that we needed to be welcoming to all of our citizens in public facilities. But it's not just about that. That started me on this journey. But it has been surprising to me how many people in the African American community I have heard from in recent months talking about still having problems getting equal access to the hottest clubs in the evening, or the restaurants, bars, music venues, and it gives the city of Houston an opportunity to weigh in and try to help smooth the path for those who want access to those facilities. Over here, we're come over. Go ahead.
If somebody is denied access to a club and they feel it was based on race, what would they do under this ordinance to file a complaint with the city, and how would the process go from there?
They would contact the City of Houston Office of Inspector General. I would assume we would make it just as accessible as we do if you want to file a complaint against a police officer, where you can download a form where you have information on the city's website and go in, give a sworn statement to the Office of Inspector General, and they would initiate a dialogue with the other party. The goal is not to issue citations. The goal is not to take someone into municipal court for prosecution. The goal is to solve problems and to make sure that everybody understands what we expect of each other as fellow citizens.
To the extent that this does duplicate provisions already in federal law, why is it important as a practical matter to have it on the books locally? What will we be able to do, or what should we be doing that we can't do today? I realize some categories are new, but to the extent it replicates it.
Well, you might as well ask why does any American city feel it necessary to have a local ordinance that supplements what's available in federal law? And I would suggest that that's because we're setting a standard. We're having the dialogue here. It allows us also to intervene, to stop practices that we think are discriminatory, but it also gives us the ability to intervene and to educate. Bob Harvey of the Greater Houston Partnership has sent a text message over that in essence he's going to be issuing his own statement, but they believe that this is a step in the right direction for the city of Houston, and they look forward to working with us on a final version to go through city council.
And how was the decision made to exempt businesses of 50 or fewer employees? Obviously, there's many people employed there as well.
I'm going to ask city attorney to step in, but this is based on what the Affordable Care Act and it tracks other statutes.
Both the Family Medical Leave Act and the Affordable Care Act have the tipping point of 50 employees. It's generally understood in federal law that 50 is the demarcation for a smaller versus a larger employer. And it was believed that in bringing private employment into this ordinance, that it was appropriate to have that same distinction. It's certainly at this point in time in the evolution of the process.
I guess as a last procedural question, how likely is it really to expect city council to compel cooperation in that forum in cases where there isn't cooperation?
We wanted an ordinance that had some teeth in it. Council has the ability to issue subpoenas and compel the presence of an entity in matters such as this. We wanted to, and we had that whether it was in the ordinance or not, but we wanted to clearly specify that it would be our intention if someone was simply ignoring the city of Houston and they decided to overtly discriminate and take the $5,000 penalty as a cost of doing business, that we wanted an opportunity to be able to say, no, that's not the goal of this ordinance. The goal of this ordinance is to reach a point where businesses across Houston treat all of their potential customers equally.
And could you just clarify the task force?
We originally drafted the ordinance with a Equal Rights Commission and had talked to members of our business community about how we would compose a Human Rights Commission that would be reflective of the overall population of the city of Houston. But as we worked through the process, it was clear that there was a lot of support for applying this ordinance to private sector businesses, but a little bit of consternation about having the initial conversation take place in a public venue in front of the citizen panel. And so instead, we would work to create an advisory panel that would help guide the OIG and review the OIG's work over time and on a periodic basis.
Mayor, there's certainly...
Because I don't want anybody to feel like this is a secret process, but it also, this brings that initial conversation into a more confidential setting where people on both sides would be more comfortable sharing the facts.
There are certain limitations under federal law when it comes to private clubs and businesses that consider themselves private. Will you run into the same roadblock where, like, the federal government can't go in if it's a private entity and say, you have to do this, even though it's considered public? How do you deal with that here in Houston if we see a group of clubs all of a sudden going private in order to avoid the ordinance?
Well, I would be stunned if a number of clubs suddenly decided to go private to avoid the ordinance, but I'll let the city attorney. I mean, I think that most of them, their goal is to have more customers coming in, not fewer.
We recognize the same exemption, but it can't be used as a subterfuge to promote discrimination. So in the type of situation that you're talking about, where they would convert it into private clubs, if it's being used as an artifice to defeat the purpose of the ordinance, then it's a different situation.
Anybody else? I think that this ordinance is an important step for the city of Houston. I'll emphasize again that in the ordinance itself, it provides protections for many of the different communities that make up the city of Houston. I'm well aware that most of the attention will be on the gay community and the transgender community, but this is a comprehensive equal rights ordinance that affects many other groups, and I expect to have strong support from many of the traditional civil rights and human rights organizations here in Houston as we move forward. But I also expect some spirited discussion, and Councilmember Cohen will be chairing that first meeting as we lay out formally for council members and for the public what's in the ordinance. Thank you. If you have other questions, be happy to answer.
Cool.